Chapter 18 of The Metal Monster. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Calm Dragon. The Metal Monster by Abraham Merritt. Chapter 18. Into the Pit. High was the sun when I awakened, or so I supposed, opening my eyes upon a flood of daylight. As I lay, lazily, recollection rushed upon me. It was no sky into which I was gazing. It was the dome of Norhala's elfin home, and Drake had not aroused me. Why? And how long had I slept? I jumped to my feet, stared about. Ruth, nor Drake, nor the black eunuch was there. "Ruth!" I shouted. "Drake!" There was no answer. I ran to the doorway. Peering up into the white vault of the heavens, I set the time of day as close to 7. I had slept then 3 hours, more or less. Yet short as that time of slumber had been, I felt marvelously refreshed, re-energized, the effect, I was certain, of the extraordinarily tonic qualities of the atmosphere of this place. But where were the others? Where Uruk? I heard Ruth's laughter, some hundreds yards to the left, half hidden by a screen of flowering shrubs. I saw a small meadow. Within it a half-dozen little white goats nuzzled around her and Dick. She was milking one of them. Reassured, I drew back into the chamber, knelt over Ventnor. His condition was unchanged. My gaze fell upon the pool that had been Norhala's bath. Longingly I looked at it. Then, satisfying myself that the milking process was not finished, slipped off my clothes and splashed about. I had just time to get back into my clothes when through the doorway came the pair, each carrying a porcelain pannikin full of milk. There was no shadow of fear or horror on her face. It was the old Ruth who stood before me, nor was there effort in the smile she gave me. She had been washed clean in the waters of sleep. "Don't worry, Walter," she said. "I know what you're thinking, but I'm me again." "Where is Uruk?" I turned to Drake brusquely to smother the sob of sheer happiness I felt rising in my throat, and at his wink and warning grimace abruptly forebode to press the question. "You men pick out the things and I'll get breakfast ready," said Ruth. Drake picked up the tea kettle and motioned me before him. "About Uruk," he whispered when he had gotten outside. I gave him a little object lesson, persuaded him to go down the line a bit, showed him my pistol, and then picked off one of Norhala's goats with it. Hated to do it, but I knew it would be good for his soul. He gave one screech and fell on his face and groveled. Thought it was a lightning bolt, I figure, and decided I had been stealing Norhala's stuff. "Uruk," I told him. "That's what you'll get, and worse, if you lay a finger on that girl inside there." "And then what happened?" I asked. "He beat it back there," he grinned, pointing toward the forest through which ran the path the eunuch had shown me, probably hiding back of a tree. As we filled the container at the outer spring, I told him of the revelations and the offer Uruk had made to me. "Whoa," he whistled. "In the nutcracker, eh? Trouble behind us and trouble in front of us." "When do we start?" he asked as we turned back. "Right after we've eaten," I answered. "There's no use putting it off. How do you feel about it?" "Frankly, like the chief guest at a lynching party," he said. "Curious, but none too cheerful." Nor was I. I was filled with a fever of scientific curiosity, but I was not cheerful, no. We ministered to Ventnor as well as we could, forcing open his set jaws, thrusting a thin rubber tube down past his windpipe into his gullet and dropping through it a few ounces of the goat milk. Our own breakfasting was silent enough. We could not take Ruth with us upon our journey, that was certain. She must stay here with her brother. She would be safer at Norhala's home than where we were going, of course, and yet to leave her was most distressing. After all, I wondered, was there any need of both of us taking the journey? Would not one do just as well? Drake could stay. "No use putting all of our eggs in one basket," I broached the subject. "I'll go down by myself while you stay and help Ruth. You can always follow me if I don't turn up in a reasonable time." His indignation at this proposal was matched only by her own. "You'll go with him, Dick Drake," she cried, "or I'll never look at or speak to you again." "Good Lord, did you think for a minute I wouldn't?" Pain and wrath struggled on his face. "We go together or neither of us goes. Ruth will be all right here, Goodwin. The only thing she has any cause to fear is Yuruk, and he's had his lesson. Besides, she'll have the rifles and her pistols, and she knows how to use them. What do you mean by making such a proposition as that?" His indignation burst all bounds. Lamely I tried to justify myself. "I'll be all right," said Ruth. "I'm not afraid of Yuruk, and none of these things will hurt me. Not after. Her eyes fell. Her lips quivered. Then she faced us steadily. "Don't ask me how I know that," she said quietly. "Believe me, I do know it. I am closer to them than you two are. And if I chose, I can call upon that alien strength their master gave me. It is for you two that I fear." "No fear for us," Drake burst out hastily. "We're Norhala's little playthings. We're taboo. Take it from me, Ruth. I'd bet my head there isn't one of these things, great or small, and no matter how many, that doesn't by this time know all about us. We'll probably be received with demonstrations of interest by the populace as a welcome guest. Probably we'll find a sign, 'Welcome to our city,' hung up over the front gate." She smiled, a trifle tremulously. "We'll come back," he said. Suddenly he leaned forward, put his hands on her shoulders. "Do you think there is anything that could keep me from coming back?" he whispered. She trembled, wide eyes searching deep into his. "Well," I broke in, a bit uncomfortably, "we'd better be starting. I think as Drake does that we're taboo. Barring accident there's no danger, and if I guess right about these things, accident is impossible." "As inconceivable as the multiplication table going wrong," he laughed, straightening. And so we made ready. Our rifles would be worse than useless, we knew. Our pistols we decided to carry, as Drake put it, for comfort. Canteens filled with water, a couple of emergency rations, a few instruments, including a small spectroscope, a selection from the medical kit, all these packed in a little haversack which he threw over his broad shoulders. I pocketed my compact but exceedingly powerful field glasses. To my poignant and everlasting regret my camera had been upon the bolting pony, and Ventnor had long been out of films for his. We were ready for our journey. Our path led straight away, a smooth and dark gray road whose surface resembled cement packed under enormous pressure. It was all of 50 feet wide now, and in daylight glistened faintly as though overlaid with some vitreous coating. It narrowed abruptly into a wedged way that stopped at the threshold of Norhala's door. Diminishing through the distance, it stretched straight as an arrow onward and vanished between perpendicular cliffs which formed the frowning gateway through which the night before we had passed upon the coursing cubes from the pit of the city. Here, as then, a mistiness checked the gaze. Ruth with us, we made a brief inspection of the surroundings of Norhala's house. It was set as though in the narrowest portion of an hourglass. The precipitous walls marched inward from the gateway forming the lower half of the figure. At the back they swung apart at a wider angle. This upper part of the hourglass was filled with a park-like forest. It was closed, perhaps 20 miles away, by a barrier of cliffs. How, I wondered, did the path which Yuruk had pointed out to me pierce them? Was it by pass or tunnel? And why was it the armored men had not found and followed it? The waste between these two mountain wedges was a valley not more than a mile wide. Norhala's house stood in its center, and it was like a garden, dotted with flowering and fragrant lilies, and here and there a tiny green meadow. The great globe of blue that was Norhala's dwelling seemed less to rest upon the ground than to emerge from it, as though its basic curvatures were hidden in the earth. What was